Mini episode 1135 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode number 1135. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris coming at you. And again, one of our favorite football analysts that we talk to regularly on the show, good friend Fran Stuchbury from such fine outlets as OurSports Central. He is an expert on all things XFL, both the first incarnation and this new one that's coming up next year. And you can follow his work among other places. He is the administrator of one of the finest pages on Facebook here. Bar none, any subject anywhere. Gridiron Access. Go like that page right there, people, because you will be getting, as I said to him off air, regular updates on things at all levels of football. He's not shy about the XFL coverage on there, but you're getting football coverage from other areas as well. And the XFL, and we'll be talking about this as well, because this is part of the story that sort of informs his coverage of it. It's a very special part of his life, the first incarnation of the XFL, which I know is making him all the more enthusiastic for the second incarnation in 2020. Again, good friend, Fran Stuchbury, thank you so much for making time for us today, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing good, Rick. Happy to be on.
Very happy to have you on. And you know what? Let's start with your origin story vis-a-vis the XFL, because there's not a lot of people out there that have a story like this one in terms of their life being intertwined with something like the XFL and this crazy upstart league that existed only in 2001 from out of the fevered mind of Vince McMahon. But you were right there covering it, and it's been such a intertwined part of your life. It's so fitting that you're going to be covering it the second time around.
Well, back in 2001, I did the best show covering a weekly column, and one of the people I interviewed was the winner Rage quarterback Jeff Fran, who's now the head coach of Purdue. So I did a great column in depth. I did team-by-team previews. I interviewed the director of football operations, Mike Keller. And then after I sold it, about 7 years later, I started getting involved covering the United Football League. I joined a fan site called XFL Access, and their administrator, Nation Hahn, messaged me telling me he knew who I was, and he read every single XFL story when he was 14 years old. So then years later, I decided to move to Raleigh because I was good friends with him, and I always lived in the Raleigh area. So now, thanks to the original XFL back in 2001, I'm living in Raleigh right now. That
is really incredible that it made such an impact on your life, and to make a friendship like that, and it really is an amazing story. And it just, on a macro level, it's weird how history repeats itself, because you can't talk about the XFL without talking about the company from which it springs, in terms of the WWE. And you and I also being big fans of the Pro Graps, you have the XFL coming along almost 20 years later at about the same time that the Monday Night Wars, which were winding down at the time of the XFL in 2001, appear to be reincarnated as the Wednesday Night Wars, with AEW coming on Wednesday nights this fall on TNT to be opposed by the NXT promotion, which will be moving to the USA Network. So it's crazy that two things that we haven't really thought about in present tense terms in this entire period of time, from the beginning of the 2000s to the end of the 2010s, the pro wrestling wars and the XFL, they're both coming back at the same time. It feels like fate somehow.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And Rick, supposedly there was supposed to be two wars, AEF versus the XFL in 2020, but AEF only lasted one. The Alliance of American Football only lasted one season, mainly because they did not have the funding. They believed in an investor that was going to commit money, and he never. Reggie Power, that he never did. They decided to beat. They had to beat the XFL to the punch and get to the market first, which ended up blowing up in their face.
It did, and you've got the WWE as a publicly traded company and a stock that had really gotten inflated a lot over the course of the last year. Whether it's overinflated or not, I'll leave that to the Wall Street experts to say, but when they got the hot new TV contracts from both USA and the big money deal from Fox, that put a lot more money in the pocket of Vince McMahon when he went to go sell some stock. So that's how a lot of this is getting funded. Vince is paying out of his own pocket. And a lot of it has been basically these things that, if you want to say as an executive, money that he earned by driving up the value of his company. I guess that's fair enough for as many complaints as I would have about the product over the last couple of years. The stock price has gone up, and in pro wrestling, the only real determinant of success or failure is the bottom line. So Vince is funding this thing, and he's doing it in ways that the AAF couldn't even begin to compete with, because, again, their whole thing, at the end of the day, it seemed to be a bunch of people pointing at each other going, I thought you had the money.
Yeah, and being in Raleigh, I kind of had it. I wrote a weekly AAF column because I work at PNC Arena, and I work the Carolina Hurricane games, and Tom Dundon comes out of nowhere to rescue AAF and makes a commitment to fund them through the season. And the thing with him is when he got involved, he didn't realize. Guess what, Tom? You're responsible for previous debts when you invest in the business. And Tom's like, I'm not paying this. So it's just disappointing because all the money that people that owed money, ticket holders didn't get their money back. They went into bankruptcy. Players got treated terribly. Some players were injured, were hurt, and it was just. And the sad thing is, Rick, if the AAF had a second season, there was a very good chance I was going to have a team in Raleigh to either work for or definitely be a big fan of.
Well, yeah, and that league, this is one of these things where, again, the perspective is a little bit different. Look, I'm a pretty hardcore football guy, but I don't begin to put myself on the level of somebody like you when it comes to watching all levels of football, nor a guest of ours fairly recently on the show, Cynthia Freeland, because I was kind of ribbing her recently when she was on the show about the AAF analytics segments she was doing on TV. I'm going, I'm looking at it like the difference between these players is, to me, is like angels dancing on the head of a pin, because these are all guys that couldn't make the NFL. To me, I don't see as much of a differential in skill level from team to team. I would guess that it's probably more coaching on what you're getting out of a fairly similar bunch of guys, but I don't know. That's my surface level analysis of this. Do you see, as this goes forward, because we don't know the makeup of the rosters yet, we're not at that point, but do you see a scenario where there could be any kind of real differentials between, this team's way more talented than this team or whatever, or would coaching and development be more predominant in what we see as far as the outcomes?
Well, it kind of depends. The teams have planned for. It kind of depends on the draft. There's going to be a draft, so there's going to be a draft in mid-October, and then there's going to be another draft probably in January in case they want to get any NFL players after that season or CSL players who are free agents.
Okay.
So there'll be multiple opportunities. The thing is, the league's going to allocate each team eight quarterbacks, and the first quarterback signed so far is Landry Jones.
Been a lot of jokes going around the last couple of days here since rumor has it the commissioner's son is pretty good at football himself here, but I think we can pretty much put that one out of the realm of possibility as far as seeing Andrew Luck on an XFL field in 2020.
Yeah, that's not happening because School's own his life, and the Colts not going to let him, go to playing XFL. But maybe he gets involved in behind the scenes, maybe in administration, maybe possibly. But the thing is, Andrew Luck got hurt so much. The last thing is getting involved with the XFL. XFL.
Yeah, much less getting hurt for he didn't want to get hurt for the millions and millions of dollars he was getting. He's not going to want to get hurt playing for what these guys are going to be playing for. So, yeah, people are making jokes about this, but they can kind of pretty much put that out of their minds. I agree with you. I think he'll be involved in some form or fashion because I think he will, once he's away from the game, rediscover his love of football and probably want to be involved in other ways. And with his dad being the commissioner, why not that way? But when you're looking at the teams in the league here, is where we're going to be getting into the logo and name reveals from last week that were put out there. Let's start in the Western Conference with the Dallas Renegades. They will be playing at Globe Life Park in Arlington. The head coach is Bob Stoops. That was something that really drew a lot of attention. It was not a thing that was as surprising to me as it was to other people. I mean, a lot of people were shocked when it first came out, and I won't deny that I was, but I very quickly understood the rationale, because it's a thing where this can't possibly be something that's going to be as draining a job for somebody like Bob Stoops. For somebody who worried about the effect of football on his health, this has got to be a lot less stress than the big-time NCAA programs, the NFL. To me, it's like a have your cake and eat it too kind of a thing, a way to stay involved coaching a team, but not have the stress and expectations of the other levels. Do you kind of see it similarly?
I definitely see it for all these coaches. It could basically be a 6-month job to some extent, where you have the draft, training camp, then you have full camp in January. It could basically be a 6-month job. And plus the fact it is in Dallas, not that far from Oklahoma. And the thing is, with that market, I mean, you're going to be playing in a baseball stadium that's being made football, so the fans can be very close to the action, similar to the San Francisco Demons back in 2001 when they played at Pac-Bell Park home with the San Francisco Giants.
Yes, and it's going to be an interesting visual setup in that kind of a way. Also visually, so they put out the logo, and again, as you noted, you have a very great column on this. I want people to check it out at OurSportsCentral.com. As you noted, featuring an outlaw in the logo, and that I know you noted some similarities to the old Dallas Desperados one from the AFL days. But talk about the logo and how you think that might play into a color scheme for them.
You may have a blue and black, a light blue and black color scheme possibly. And the thing is, Renegades is a common name, but it fits the Dallas identity, the area, like.
It does. It's got that somewhat Western kind of a theme, which staying on the same state here, basically, same deal. Houston Roughnecks. They will be playing at TDECU Stadium, the primary tenant in that stadium, Houston Cougars football. June Jones running the program here. One of the more interesting names to me in the last couple of decades of football coaching. This is a guy who always seems like he's, and I don't mean this in a bad way when I say bouncing around the fringe, but SMU, Hawaii, whatever, hasn't really had big-time jobs in college football, a guy who has been offensive coordinator, and I think he was interim coach a few times in the NFL, but a guy who was one of the big innovators. He, in a lot of ways, I think of him a lot like Mike Martz, that somebody that, again, whether you're talking spread offense or different types of creative offenses, these guys to me are sort of giants of the game, and yet neither one you see today in a big-time NFL job and a big-time college football job. So June Jones, yeah, maybe he's looking for something a little less stressful as well here, but you know that they're going to come out playing a creative type of football because that is what we have come to expect from June Jones.
I wouldn't surprise me if they have a high-power line shoot offense similar to what he did at SMU in Hawaii. And plus, he was also head coach of the Hamilton Wildcats in the CFL for a while, where he had a hot and exciting offense there as well. But talking about the logo, Rick, I mean, people are saying, "Oh, you're stealing the Houston Whalers logo." It's similar, but it's a little similar. But you can't say that's copyright infringement based on that. Looking at that logo.
Yeah, I mean, there are some similarities, and as you noted, again, this outstanding column, which I highly recommend at OurSportsCentral.com, Oliver Luck playing 5 seasons with the Oilers from 82 to 86, so with Houston being a team in the league, I'm sure this is something he had in his head. But you had said that with the red and the blue there, that maybe they might want to go with the same kind of blue threads there for the Oilers, and I would agree with your assessment because I think that would go over really well. Again, the Oilers are very fondly remembered in that town. Never made it over the hump, but especially in the late 70s, some great teams that they had there. My Cleveland Browns tangled with them memorably a bunch of times, and I would agree with your assessment. I think if they heed your recommendation on the color scheme, they're going to be doing the right thing.
Yeah, they definitely will. I feel it's something that fans can embrace, and based on what I've read on social media, it's one of the more popular logos that's been published.
Yeah, so we'll see if they end up going in that direction. Also in the West, the Los Angeles Wildcats, they will be playing in Carson, California at Dignity Health Sports Park. Winston Moss is going to be their head coach. Their stadium is the primary stadium for the LA Galaxy. And Moss is yet another, every one of I was going to say another interesting choice, but really all 8 of these teams have interesting choices as head coach.
Yeah, Winston Moss is an out-of-the-box choice, but he was a good assistant coach. And he brings credibility to the table because his offense coordinator is Norm Chow, who's known for running innovative offenses.
Yes, he is. And again, much like June Jones, Norm Chow being on the sidelines in this league, albeit in an assistant capacity, is just going to make it very interesting as well. And when we talk about how these teams are going to differentiate from each other, again, schematics and development is probably going to be the main battleground here when you're looking at the talent level of the players. I think it's going to be what you do with what you have. And so the Wildcats are going to have that to be thinking about on how they want to do it on the field. Off the field, as you noted in your great column, LA in the logo, much like the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that a little bit of orange and maroon combination here. So it is really intriguing to think of what the uniforms might look like. There's a chance to me they might have the most striking uniforms in the league when they unveil them.
I think they will have an interesting color scheme, and the other thing that helps them, Rick, is that they are playing in a smaller MLS stadium where there's not going to be that much pressure for them to get 30 or 40,000 when they can get 25,000 in there. It's not going to be. It's going to look great on TV. It's going to look really great on TV. It
definitely is, and you've got. You go from that end of the spectrum to the extreme other end of the spectrum. The Seattle Dragons will be playing at CenturyLink Field in Seattle, and so they're of course sharing that stadium with the Seahawks and also the Sounders FC team. And when you're talking about getting a local legend in there as head coach, they doubled down on that one. Jim Zorn on the sidelines for the Seattle Dragons. That's going to be a big winner in a competitive local market.
That's definitely going to bring fans there. I like the Dragons logo. Some people say it looks a little bit UAB places, but it's a fun logo. You can have a cool mascot. You can have a good color scheme. And another thing about the Seattle Dragons is their offensive coordinator is Mike Riley, who was the head coach of the San Antonio Commanders of the AAF. So they will have another pretty exciting offensive line.
They will. We are definitely going to be seeing some AAF alumni playing a part in this league going all the way around. So that's your Western Conference. In the Eastern Conference, the D.C. Defenders, they will be playing at Audi Field in D.C., which is the place where the United soccer team plays, and Pep Hamilton on the sidelines there. So really interesting for him, a guy who's worked his way up as an assistant coach offensively, Indianapolis to my Cleveland Browns to Michigan. So this is one of the guys who is still working his way up the coaching ladder, trying to get a head coaching job at a bigger college or pro program at some point. So some of these guys, this looks like it's going to be sort of their last job, their quasi-retirement job. Pep Hamilton is different in the sense that this is a guy who I think is still, at his age, looking for a bigger platform somewhere else. It's interesting that he would choose the XFL for that.
Well, he left Michigan for this opportunity. He wants to be head coach. Plus the fact this is not a one-and-done league. I can see the XFL at least going 3 years before they make any decisions about giving up. Because Vince is not going to want. Vince is not going to want to. Vince wants to succeed. He wants it to sustain.
Very much so, yeah. And in your column, you made a great point that it almost looks like sort of a crest-type logo there, and that could possibly tie into a military or patriotic theme being in Washington, D.C. You speculated about red, white, and blue uniforms, and so, yeah, especially with a team name like the Defenders, I'd be very, very surprised if they weren't going to go in the direction that you're suggesting.
Yeah, and plus, I think that's the direction they're going to go to. But also, they're in another big market, but they're playing in Hamlin Stadium where it'll look. I mean, they get 25,000 there. It's going to look on TV.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting because you've got them in a major media center, and then especially this next team we're talking about, the New York Guardians. They will be playing at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, and you might have heard of some of these other tenants in the building, the Giants and the Jets, and their head coach, Kevin Gilbride. Again, when you're talking about long-time folks roaming the sidelines in the NFL, a guy who was a head coach for a period of time and for many, many other years, a top offensive assistant. You know what would really spice it up here, Fran, is if he ended up getting one of the Ryan sons to be his defensive coordinator. I'd pay to see that.
Yeah, so would I. I mean, you're also definitely a much-needed market for the XFL. The big question was should they play a Red Bull home on the West? The thing is, WWE had WrestleMania at MetLife Stadium. Vince wants to be at MetLife Stadium. He wasn't going to go anyplace else. You agree, Rick?
That's a great point. That's an absolute. I hadn't put two and two together on that, but you're right. That was where the most recent WrestleMania was. The next WrestleMania will be coming up at the home of the Tampa Bay Vipers, who we are going to be talking about now, Raymond James Stadium. That's where WrestleMania 36 is going to be. That's where the Tampa Bay Vipers, I guess they're going to have to play a little bit of a prolonged road trip during the season here, if that's the case, sharing the stadium with WrestleMania next spring. Marc Trestman on the sidelines. He did a lot of good work in my hometown of Cleveland over the years as a top offensive assistant back in the Bernie Kosar days. Also known for being a head coach successfully in the CFL, a little bit less successfully for the Bears in the NFL, although that was a tough situation he was thrust into. But yet another thing here of getting a super established coach, somebody who is known for offensive innovation, like a couple of these other coaches we've talked about here as well. So the Vipers, they're going to be, again, they're one of the teams that's going to be playing in a big stadium and needing to fill it, and I know they're hoping that the schematics of Marc Trestman are going to help get them there.
Well, they're going to have an exciting offense. The guy knows how to run a high-power offense. I think that's going to be exciting. On defense, their defensive coordinator is Jerry Glanville. Yes, he's still alive and kicking.
Wow. Well, that's going to be definitely worth seeing. And again, the Vipers, you noted in your column that this nickname, of course, used before by the AFL2's Tennessee Valley Vipers from 2000 to 2004, and that in 2010 and the Arena Football League as the Alabama Vipers. So not much of a sense yet of what these unis might look like, but you could go a lot of interesting directions, to be sure.
Well, they're definitely going to have the snake logo someplace on the helmet or on the uniform as a secondary logo.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be a mugshot of Jake the Snake Roberts. Who knows? But they could. You want to tie that in. You want to tie in Jake the Snake in some way. Great past lounge guest as well. But the last team to talk about here that we haven't gotten to, the St. Louis Battlehawks. They will be playing at the Dome at America's Center in St. Louis, the erstwhile home of the St. Louis Rams, now the home of the St. Louis Battlehawks, and Jonathan Hayes is going to be their head coach.
He coach can't say as an assistant. I saw him during his press conference. He was very passionate. He had a lot of enthusiasm. I think he's going to be a good coach.
Yeah, I think so as well. And he definitely seems to have the requisite amount of enthusiasm for the job. And we'll see what he can bring to them. And again, the Battlehawks. a very, very creative name, as you noted in your column, with a sword in the logo, and again, the letters STL, as you pointed out. So you also indicated that it leaves open some interesting color scheme possibilities.
Yeah, you can have blue and white and silver. And the other thing is, I wasn't the first to notice it, but somebody else did, where if you flip the logo upside down, it does spell STL. I don't think the XFL is that creative to think, we're going to put it upside down, people are going to give them a little Easter egg. I don't think so, Greg.
Subliminal things, yeah, you never know. The other thing is here, too, and that a lot of times when a team has a longer name, there is a tendency sometimes to abbreviate it, and ironically, one of the other instances of that is the Seattle Seahawks. Sometimes you just hear them referred to as the Hawks. Now, if that's the case in St. Louis here, again, maybe I'm really dating myself because I don't know how many people are still alive in St. Louis that remember the old St. Louis Hawks of the NBA. But is that a possibility, do you think? You think the fact that, St. Louis Hawks, that's got a nice kind of ring in some people's mind? I wonder if they were trying to invoke that in any kind of way.
Well, it was shocking. Remember years ago when baseball came to Tampa Bay, it was Devil Rays, and they shortened it to Rays. Anything's possible, Rick.
Yeah, you never know what they're trying to invoke here. But, again, a lot of interesting things happening already. And like you said, the next big thing is going to be the draft, you said, in October, right?
Yeah, in October. And one thing I want to talk about St. Louis briefly is that I think they're going to have the best chance in the XFL. They don't. It wasn't an NFL too. I think they're going to have the best chance in the XFL. That's my prediction on that.
Well, okay, that'll be worth paying attention to and seeing what the chances of that are. And of course, the launch of the season will be coming up a couple months from now, as we sit here recording this. And of course, your coverage I know is going to be ongoing at OurSportsCentral.com. And again, I want to go back and I want to hammer this point again here too. The Gridiron Access page on Facebook. Go like it, people, because again, not just XFL, but other leagues in there as well. Of course, some NFL, some college, but particularly for something like this, you're not going to find any page anywhere on Facebook that's going to be covering the XFL like Gridiron Access, Fran being the administrator of it, and pretty much, I'll give you credit here, pretty much a one-man band as far as you generating the content. And again, I come back to what I said before here too, that if you are somebody that likes the page, the stuff's always popping up on there. You are tireless, Fran, and you are always finding the really great nuggets.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I mean, it's a fun page where I pretty much cover everything, and with news and notes, videos, anything of interest of a wide variety of topics. But I'm really looking forward to the next step with the XFL with the draft in mid-October. I'm also looking forward to when they have the ticket prices come out. I hear the plan is to have some affordable options for families. Because the NFL costs a fortune, and it's not family friendly, but the XFL can be.
Yes, and that would be a very, very real point of contrast to the NFL if they wanted to establish that. And I know they're looking to establish positive counterpoints to the NFL wherever they can. That would be one of them. I think the TV deal also is going to leave them a little bit more stable than the AAF because they're going to be on big platforms for all of their games here. And from what I was reading about it, I think it's at least a little bit more of a favorable revenue cut than the AAF had. So that's something that should help them as far as their survival possibilities as well.
I think it definitely does, especially with Fox, ESPN. One guy I'd love to see doing XFL games on ESPN is Pat McAfee, who's now involved with ESPN as well.
Yes, I think you would definitely see that because he's got some involvement with WWE, and so it's a natural bridge right there for him to do that. We know it won't be good old JR like it was in 2001 as he has moved over to All Elite Wrestling, but you never know who WWE might get from the ranks to try to be the commentators for the games. But so sitting here right now, several weeks out from the draft, couple months out from the start of the season, anything else with the XFL going on that is top of your mind?
Well, Saturday they opened up the XFLshop.com for fans to buy merchandise for these teams. So fans can get some shirts, some caps, some hoodies. So they have merchandise out there for fans to get. I mean, eventually they'll have jerseys. Probably definitely time for the holidays so you can get them for Christmas. But the next step is, the draft, and then you'll have the helmet reveals, the jersey design. There's a lot, and then you have the next 7 quarterbacks that have to be signed, but then they'll be assigned teams. So that'll be a lot to look forward to when you have seven quarterbacks. People will be talking about that signed to the XFL.
All right, well, these are milestones that we'll all be able to track through your coverage at OurSportsCentral.com and other outlets, including the Gridiron Access page on Facebook, of which you are the administrator, and where you do a fine job, as you do everywhere. And again, it is not easy to find people who can break down with this level of degree what's going on with the XFL. But thankfully, Fran, you are right there, just arm's length away to be able to break it down for us. Thank you so much for your time today, my friend.
Thanks, Vic. Always happy to be guest.
Always a pleasure, Fran. Thank you again, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in to FDH Lounge Mini Episode number 1135.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.